Am I, female, 28, overreacting about my Myel, female, 64, secretly replacing my breast milk with formula behind my back? Throwaway for obvious reasons because my husband knows my main account and I don't want him to see this before I figure out what to do. I'm on mobile, so sorry for any formatting issues. So, I'm a first-time mom to my 4-month-old son, Noah. Getting pregnant was a huge struggle for us. It took almost 3 years of trying, thousands of dollars in fertility treatments, still paying those off, and 2 miscarriages before we finally got our baby. I still have nightmares sometimes about those losses. Breastfeeding was really important to me from the beginning. My mom passed away when I was in college, and I think part of me just wanted to have that connection with my baby that I missed out on with my own mom. Plus all the research about antibodies and brain development. The thing is, breastfeeding was hard at first. My nipples were destroyed, Noah couldn't figure out latching, and my supply was so low he wasn't gaining weight properly. I saw 3 different lactation consultants and cried basically every day. I don't judge moms who formula feed at all. Fed is best, seriously. But I really wanted to make breastfeeding work, and eventually it did. By 6 weeks, we had finally gotten the hang of it. So fast forward to 3 weeks ago when I had to go back to work part-time. I'm an accountant. We can't afford daycare right now because my husband James, male 30, is a teacher, and between his salary and my reduced hours plus those medical bills, we're stretched pretty thin. So my MIL Diane, female 64, offered to watch Noah 2 days a week while I'm at the office. I was nervous about this from the start because Diane and I have always had a difficult relationship. She's never outright mean, but she definitely has opinions about everything and doesn't hesitate to let you know when she thinks you're doing something wrong. Like when I was 8 months pregnant, she came over and completely reorganized our kitchen cabinets while I was napping because she thought they were inefficient. James is kind of blind to this stuff because that's just how she's always been with him. Anyway, I've been pumping like crazy to make sure Noah has enough breast milk for the days I'm at work. I label everything with dates and amounts and store it properly. But last week, I started noticing something weird. The milk wasn't being used up as much as it should be based on how much Noah eats. And on days after Diane watches him, his poop looks different. Sorry, T-My. And he seems extra hungry in the evenings. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, but then I found an empty formula container hidden in our outside trash can. I definitely didn't buy formula, and we don't have any in the house, so I confronted Diane about it. I asked her about Noah's diaper looking different, and she blamed it on my diet affecting my milk. When I mentioned finding the formula container in the trash, she admitted giving him a tiny bit to help him sleep. I reminded her we agreed to only use my breast milk, but she laughed and said I was being obsessive about breastfeeding. When I tried to explain my concerns about his gut health, she cut me off and bragged about how her kids had formula and turned out fine, especially James, who was the smartest in his class. When I directly asked if she'd been regularly replacing my milk with formula, she got defensive about her experience as a mother and mentioned raising 3 healthy children. I ended up backing down because I hate conflict, and she made me feel like I was being ridiculous. But it kept bothering me. So I did something I'm not super proud of. I ordered a nanny cam and installed it in the kitchen where we keep the bottles and formula. I told myself it was just to make sure everything was okay. Well, I checked the footage after Diane watched Noah yesterday, and I'm devastated. She was deliberately pouring my breast milk down the drain while saying my milk isn't good enough for her grandbaby and that grandma knows better. Then she mixed formula instead. She even added rice cereal to 1 bottle, which our pediatrician specifically said not to do at this age. I'm so angry I can barely type this. I pumped that milk. Do you know how hard it is to pump enough for a whole day? My nipples still get sore, and sometimes I have to pump during my lunch break in a supply closet at work, and she just dumps it out. But here's my problem. I don't know if I should show James the footage. His relationship with his mom is complicated. Sometimes he dismisses her boundary crossing as just how she is, and other times he gets super defensive about her. I'm worried if I show him, either 1, he'll think I'm overreacting and say it's not a big deal, that she used formula 2, he'll blow up at her and cause a permanent rift in the family. And to be honest, I'm sometimes jealous of his family because mine is so small since my mom died. I don't want to be the reason he loses his relationship with his mom. I've been crying all day about this. It feels like such a huge betrayal, like she's saying I'm not good enough to feed my own baby. Am I overreacting? Would you show your husband the footage? Edit. Wow, I didn't expect so many responses so quickly. To answer some common questions. Yes, we've talked to Diane several times about only using breast milk. I left detailed instructions and she agreed to follow them. No, there's nothing wrong with formula in general. I know lots of babies thrive on formula. This is about her going behind my back and ignoring our wishes as parents. We can't afford a different sitter right now. My job barely covers our bills, as is with my reduced hours. James has stood up to his mom before, but usually only after things get really bad. He tends to avoid confrontation with her until I'm at my breaking point. Edit 2. A lot of people are asking why I'm so set on breastfeeding. It's not that I think formula is poison or anything. It's just really important to me personally after our fertility struggles, and my pediatrician strongly encouraged breastfeeding for at least 6 months. Plus, Noah had some reflux issues early on, and breast milk seemed to help with that more than the sample formula we tried. Some of you have pointed out that this is a form of sabotage, and others mentioned this is more about control and boundaries than just feeding. That's actually really helpful, thank you. I hadn't thought about it from that angle. Now for the first update. So, first of all, wow. I honestly wasn't expecting that many people to respond to my post. Thank you all so much for the validation, because I was seriously questioning my own sanity. Diane has always been good at making me feel like I'm crazy for having normal boundaries. It's been about a week since my last post, and a lot has happened. I'm still kind of thinking about everything, to be honest. So after reading all your comments, and yes, I'll admit I showed them all to James, which was probably manipulative, but I needed him to see I wasn't being ridiculous. I decided to show him the nanny cam footage that night after we put Noah down to sleep. I was so nervous when I pulled up the videos on my laptop. James was confused at first about why I even had nanny cam footage. Yeah, I hadn't told him about the camera. He gave me this really weird look when I explained I installed it because I was suspicious of his mom, and he said his mom wouldn't do something like that. But then I showed him the footage. Watching his face change as he saw his mother pouring my breast milk down the drain while saying stuff about mommy's milk not being good enough was tough. At first, he tried to rationalize it, saying maybe she thought that bag was spoiled or maybe she was trying to help because pumping is hard for me. But then as he watched more footage from different days showing the same behavior over and over, he just got quiet. And then he saw the part where she added rice cereal to the bottle, which our doctor said not to do yet, while saying they did it with James and he turned out fine. I've never seen James that angry in our entire 7 years together, not even when we lost our second pregnancy. His face got all red and he kept opening and closing his fists and he just kept saying, "What the fuck?" over and over. It actually reminded me of something that happened with our wedding that I'd almost forgotten about. Diane had pretended to accept our choice of wedding cake flavor, but then called the bakery behind our backs and changed it to chocolate because she said no one likes fruity wedding cakes, and James has always loved her chocolate cake. We only found out because the baker called to confirm something else. James was upset then, but he brushed it off as mom being mom, and we changed it back without much drama. But this was different. This was about our baby. He immediately called his mom and put her on speaker. James asked her if she'd been replacing my breast milk with formula when watching Noah. She hesitated and then said she supplemented a little when he seemed hungry, like it was no big deal. James told her we had video of her doing it every time she watched Noah and deliberately pouring my milk down the drain. She started saying she was just doing what's best for Noah based on her experience as a mother and grandmother, and that formula was what she used for all her kids, and they turned out fine. James tried explaining how hard I've worked to keep up my milk supply and how her actions were undermining that, but she dismissed modern breastfeeding as trendy nonsense and said in her day they didn't obsess over these things. That's when James raised his voice, which he never does with his mom. He asked her how she could disrespect our parenting decisions. Then she suggested that I was controlling James and turning him against his family. She said, "I never liked her, and I'm always trying to keep him away from his family." This is actually the opposite of true. I've been the one encouraging him to call his parents more and plan visits. James got really angry then and told her that I've been more understanding than most women would be with her constant boundary crossing. She kept insisting we were making a big deal out of nothing and that using formula isn't going to hurt the baby. That's when James told her if she can't respect our boundaries as parents, she won't see Noah again. She immediately started crying and saying we were cruel to keep her grandson from her, and how could we do this to her after all she's done for us? James told her to think about her actions and that we'd talk more when everyone calmed down. Then we both turned off our phones and just sat there. I felt both relieved that James finally stood up to her, but also guilty because I never wanted to cause a rift between them. Their family has always been so tight-knit, and even though Diane drives me crazy sometimes, she is Noah's grandmother. The next morning, we woke up to 34 missed calls. 34. 22 from Diane, 7 from James's dad, George, and 5 from James's sister, Rebecca. Plus about 1 million text messages, ranging from apologetic to completely accusatory. Diane's texts were all about how she raised 3 healthy children so she knows what babies need, that I've always tried to keep James from his family, begging us not to keep her only grandchild from her, saying the camera is an invasion of privacy, claiming I'm jealous of her relationship with James, and insisting Noah needs his grandmother. But the really surprising thing was that James's dad, George, called. He's usually Diane's biggest defender and rarely gets involved in any conflict. James had sent him some clips of the footage, and George actually apologized. He said he had no idea Diane was deliberately going against our wishes like that. He sounded genuinely shocked and said he would talk to her. James's sister, Rebecca, though, completely different story. She's furious with us for breaking their mother's heart over just some formula. She called me one of those sanctimommy types and said I was being controlling and ridiculous. Rebecca doesn't even have kids, but apparently she's an expert on parenting now. So now we're dealing with a bunch of practical issues, like 1. We need to find immediate alternative childcare. We literally can't afford daycare. I checked again, and the cheapest one in our area is still $375 a week, which we just don't have. James is trying to rearrange his teaching schedule, but it's the middle of the semester, so that's complicated. 2. We have to decide what kind of relationship to allow Diane to have with Noah going forward. James thinks we should do supervised visits only for a while, but honestly, I'm not even comfortable with that right now. 3. The family is totally split, with George surprisingly on our side, kind of, and Rebecca acting like we're monsters. James is going through it emotionally. I can see him cycling between being angry at his mom, then feeling guilty about setting boundaries, then getting angry again when he remembers the footage. He told me yesterday that he feels like he's betraying his mom, but that he knows what she did was wrong. I'm having my own mixed feelings too. I'm proud of James for defending me and our parenting choices, but I also feel terrible for being the cause of this family drama. Like maybe I should have tried harder to work things out with Diane directly, but then I remember her pouring my breast milk down the drain while trash-talking me, and I get angry all over again. The latest development is that Diane has shown up at our house twice unannounced in the past 3 days. The first time, James answered the door and told her now wasn't a good time to talk, and she left crying. The second time, yesterday, she refused to leave and started getting louder and louder about just wanting to see her grandson until our neighbor came over to check if everything was okay. So embarrassing. I don't know what to do now. Part of me thinks we should consider allowing supervised visits eventually for family harmony, but another part feels like this breach of trust is unforgivable. How do you get past someone deliberately undermining you as a parent and lying to your face about it? Am I being unreasonable here? Should we be trying harder to smooth things over? I'm so exhausted from all this drama on top of, taking care of a 4-month-old. Edit. A few people have asked about my job situation. I'm currently working part-time, 24 hours a week, as an accountant. And honestly, she was literally dumping out milk that I worked so hard to pump. Do you know how painful and time-consuming pumping is? It's not like she gave him formula once in an emergency. She did it every time and then lied about it to our faces. Now for the second update. It's been 3 weeks since my last post. So much has happened, I don't even know where to start. We've basically been in crisis mode since the whole confrontation with Diane. My anxiety has been through the roof, and I've barely been sleeping. which is just great when you already have a 4-month-old who wakes up twice a night. Okay, so childcare first, I guess. We somehow cobbled together this totally unsustainable but currently working childcare situation. James managed to rearrange some of his teaching schedule. His department head was surprisingly understanding when he explained the situation. And I'm working from home 2 days a week now. My boss was less understanding, but whatever. We also found this college student who lives in our apartment building who can watch Noah for a few hours 3 days a week for way less than daycare would cost. She's an early childhood education major, so that's kind of perfect, but she can only do afternoons between classes. It's a lot. Financially, we're barely keeping our heads above water, and emotionally, we're both completely drained. There have been moments, like at 3 a.m. when Noah won't stop crying and I have a work deadline the next day, where I've caught myself wondering if standing firm against Diane is even worth all this strain. And then I immediately feel horrible for even thinking that, because of course it's worth it. She literally poured my breast milk down the drain while trash-talking me. But still, the awful thoughts creep in sometimes when I'm exhausted. Diane has gone completely off the deep end, by the way. After the initial barrage of calls and texts, which eventually stopped when we both blocked her number, she started sending daily gifts for Noah. Like every single day, there's a package on our doorstep. Baby clothes, toys, these weird homemade scrapbook pages, even a college fund savings bond one day. We've been returning everything unopened, but she keeps sending stuff. It feels weirdly aggressive, like she's trying to force her way back into our lives through Amazon Prime. And she's enlisted basically the entire extended family to plead her case. James' Aunt Carol texted me saying I was destroying their family over spilled milk. Ha! And his cousin Tyler called James, saying we were being cruel to keep a grandmother from her grandchild. Most of them have no idea what actually happened, because Diane is telling everyone we're overreacting about her just giving the baby a little formula one time because he seemed hungry. Not that she deliberately poured my milk down the drain every time and then lied about it. The worst was this super uncomfortable dinner at James's cousin Melissa's house last Sunday. We had no idea Diane would be there. Melissa just invited us for dinner saying she wanted to see the baby. We show up and guess who's sitting in the living room playing innocent? Diane. She acted like nothing was wrong, immediately tried to take Noah from me, and then started crying when James said we needed to leave. Melissa got all upset, saying we were causing a scene and being dramatic, and it was so awkward. We just left early, and I felt this weird mix of totally justified but also like socially anxious about the whole thing. I hate conflict so much. James has been struggling. I mean, we both have. But he's got this whole extra layer of complicated feelings about his mom. He actually started therapy last week, which is huge for him. He's always been so resistant to the idea. But he's had moments where he's kind of resentful toward me, like I forced him to choose sides, even though he logically knows that's not fair. Last week, he snapped at me about something totally unrelated. I think it was about loading the dishwasher wrong. And then later admitted he was actually upset about not talking to his mom for 2 weeks, which was the longest they'd ever gone without speaking. One night last week, I woke up at like 2 a.m. and James wasn't in bed. I found him in the bathroom with the shower running, sitting on the floor of the tub, fully clothed, just crying, like sobbing. He didn't know I saw him, and I didn't say anything because I could tell he was trying to hide it from me. That broke my heart. He's trying so hard to be strong about all this, but it's clearly tearing him apart. The strangest twist in all this is that George, James' dad, has become our unexpected ally. After initially calling to try to smooth things over, he's been sharing all these stories about Diane's controlling behavior throughout their 40-year marriage. Apparently, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like when James was in college, Diane would call his professors if she thought his grades weren't good enough. And she used to regularly go through Rebecca's mail and phone records well into her 20s. George loves Diane, but he said he's not surprised by what she did with the breast milk. He still hopes we'll all reconcile eventually, though. And speaking of Rebecca, James's sister, she initially cut contact with us completely and was Team Diane all the way. But then something happened last week that changed everything. Rebecca was going to let Diane watch her dog while they went away for the weekend. Rebecca doesn't have kids, but her dog is basically her baby. She specifically told Diane The dog has food allergies and can only eat his special prescription food. Well, Diane decided the dog's special food was ridiculous and gave him regular dog food instead because that's what dogs ate in her day. And the dog ended up at the emergency vet with a severe allergic reaction. When Rebecca confronted her, Diane said basically the same things she said to us, that she knows better because of her experience, that Rebecca was being too precious about the dog, etc. So now, Rebecca gets it. She called James yesterday, actually in tears, saying she's starting to see the pattern of boundary violations and she's sorry she didn't believe us. But the biggest thing that happened, and the reason I'm finally posting this update, was 2 days ago. We had a doctor's appointment for Noah's 4-month checkup. We were gone for maybe 2 hours total. When we got home, we found Diane in our house, in the nursery, rearranging everything and organizing Noah's clothes by color because apparently my organization system makes no sense. I nearly had a heart attack. James asked how she got in and what she was doing, and she just cheerfully explained she was helping by organizing things properly. I immediately went to check the fridge, and sure enough, she had moved all my pumped breast milk from the fridge to the freezer, which can mess up the milk if it's not properly frozen right away. James told her to leave immediately, but she got all defensive, saying she's allowed to help her own son and grandson. When I pointed out that we'd explicitly told her not to come over, she claimed she was worried because we weren't answering her calls, because we blocked her number after all the harassment. James asked for the emergency key back. We completely forgot she even had an emergency key from when she was watching Noah. She refused, saying she needed access in case something happens. That's when James threatened to call the police if she didn't leave immediately. She started crying, saying we were being cruel to her and that she just wants to be involved in her grandson's life. James had to physically escort her to the door while she kept protesting and trying to explain herself. After she left, we were both shaking, like this was a whole new level of boundary violation. She literally broke into our house while we weren't home. I was so upset I could barely form sentences. That night, James called his mom with me sitting next to him. Not on speaker, but I could hear most of it. James told her firmly that her behavior was unacceptable and dangerous. When she tried to justify herself and blame me for turning James against her, he didn't back down. He explained that replacing my breast milk and breaking into our home were serious violations of trust. After they talked for a while, she finally admitted she thought she knew better because of her experience as a mother. James made it clear this wasn't just about feeding choices, but about respect and honesty. He told her she needed therapy and wouldn't see Noah again until she showed real change and understanding about why her actions were wrong. He ended by saying he loves her, but his priority now is his wife and son. After he hung up the phone, he just sat there staring at the wall for like 10 minutes. But he seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from him. The next day, we changed all our locks, which was expensive, but so worth it for my peace of mind. The past 2 days have been strangely peaceful without constantly managing Diane's intrusions and drama. George called yesterday to say Diane has actually made an appointment with a therapist, which is shocking, honestly. I'm skeptical that she'll actually change, but it's something, I guess. Our plan going forward is no contact with Diane for at least 3 months. After that, we might consider very limited supervised visits if she shows consistent respect for our boundaries. Any future babysitting is years away, if ever, and would require family therapy sessions first. Zero tolerance policy for any further violations. 1 strike, and she's out again. I have such mixed feelings about all this. On one hand, I'm relieved that James finally put his foot down and that we're on the same page about protecting our family. On the other hand, I'm sad about the family fracture and worried about the long-term effects on everyone, especially Noah. I'm proud of James for standing firm, but I worry about how this will affect him long-term. I'm confident we made the right parenting decision, but I still have all the normal new mom anxieties on top of this giant mess. Anyway, thank you Reddit for helping me trust my instincts and for all the support.